So the next element we're going to talk about is equip, and that's more into completing your certifications, knowing what supplies and tools to use, and anticipating expenses. So let's talk about research and complete some certifications.
Right. So in the aspect is the same thing that you obtained all your training and all your knowledge and experience for your military aspect. Well, guess what? There's more that needs to be acquired for the civilian aspect, right? For maintenance side of the house, obviously, A&P, very important. For the operations pilot side of the house, you can't, your ATP, that airline transport pilot certificate holds more weight than what people anticipate and what they think, right? And it's basically saying you are a professional airline transport pilot. I mean, It breaks it down as in the basic elements of what you need. And it's like with the A&P, everybody sits there mechanic-wise, and it's like, oh, I don't have to have it, I don't need it, you don't have to there are jobs out there that doesn't require it and this and that, and it's just like, it's the same aspect of when you look at a college degree or any other kind of certification. It's not whether or not, if you have it, yes, obviously it is a positive, it is a bonus, it's a feather in your hat, and it's worth it, because what it does, it holds open the doors of opportunity that would otherwise be closed to you. Yeah. That is what makes the significant difference, right? And how the employers post the positions and how they portray what the requirements are, okay? And because there is the definable elements of preferred and required. And when you read through job descriptions, over and over and over again, you will come up to those two keywords. And the difference between the preferred and required, and although it may be obvious, but some people, they just kind of don't interpret it that way, is that there is an absolute. We require it, we require it. There is no ifs, ands, or anything about it. We're going to sit there and that's the way it's going to be. We prefer it. Normally, if you have a preference, it's because something will compensate something else. So if you have experience versus education, if you have education versus the experience, and so on and so forth, and how that all manipulates in, that's where the preference comes in. We would prefer you to have this because obviously that means the experience comes with it. And so understanding what certifications you need to get, which ones will be required, what jobs will be closed off to you if you don't have them, and that's the biggest aspect. What careers you won't be able to follow through, and most of all, it's investing in yourself. It's creating your own opportunities of what you can potentially do down the road. Making
you more valuable, and it kind of loops back to knowing the type of career that you want. I mean, obviously, if you want to do something different.
And when we loop back with that, it also loops back into our timeline and our calendar, right? And so focusing on the goals of what we have in mind, that, oh, if I have this certification, well, wait a minute, it takes me X amount of time to get it, it takes me X amount of dollars. That's all part of our planning process for the transition, is to ensure that we can cover all that. And so like going into that, the X amount of dollars and the process and everything else, is understanding that there are expenditures that come down the road for having to deal with knowing what the supplies, tools, right, that may be required. So.
Yeah, because I remember, some of the jobs that you had as a mechanic, you had to buy all your tools, and then some jobs
I've not only had to buy tools once, I've had to buy tools twice, Yeah, so, and that was one of the things that, I still have conversations with people with that when I talk to them, right? And it's tricky because you have to be careful. And especially if you bring up the contracting side or the overseas side or different elements of that, okay, aircraft are now manufactured globally. And the Army does not only purchase American manufactured aircraft anymore. Not only that, but there's many military application aircraft out there that they're not manufactured in the U.S. anymore. Some of them are manufactured. They are manufactured in the U.S., but they're not by American manufacturers. They're by European identities. And so within that, it means all of the hardware, everything on it, it's all metric. And it's the same thing when I started in the EMS and working on, Eurocopter aircraft, was I had to duplicate my toolbox all over again and start over in metric. And one of the first questions that I had to an employer at that time was, do you reimburse for me having to buy all the tools again, right? And understanding the difference between paying and reimbursing, and understanding that if an employer is not going to reimburse you, it's going to be an expenditure that you have to put out. And that could be all the way up to relocation, which is a huge factor, and we'll get into that later on down the road. But, you know, when you sit there and especially when it comes to the tools, when it comes to ID, you know, TWIC card, for example.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so that although reimbursed, you know, that's almost a $200 expenditure that you have to just ante up from the very beginning. So there's things out there that, you know, although you may be reimbursed for it, it will take time to get that money back, which we've all dealt with TDYs and different reimbursements from the government, so we know how that goes. So, you know, but to put it all together to anticipate the expenses for the job searching and for the job placement, you know, and the placement is the important part because that's where you're actually going to start spending the money. You know, there is an accounted cost that goes with the searching. Okay, going to job fairs, going to Heli-Expo, attending Heli-Expo, it costs you money from the very beginning. You know, is there a return on investment? Yes. There's a huge value that is returned back to you. You know, and it's all dependent upon people can go off and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on formal education. This is how much are you willing to invest in yourself to get that return on investment of what needs to come to you. So equipping yourself and being ready to deal with everything that comes in hand, you know, all of that adds the value back to what you can offer an employer, you know, and broadening your own horizons as to what you can bring to the table.
Absolutely. So the next one we're going to talk about is networking, right?
Right.
All right. And we'll be coming up with that next.